Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, the man England would remember as the Kingmaker, was the kind of figure history produces only during chaos, when the old order collapses under its own weight and the game of power becomes so brutal that only predators with perfect instincts survive. Born in 1428 into one of the most dangerous families of the Wars of the Roses, he was groomed from childhood not to serve kings but to calculate them, an aristocrat who treated monarchy like a chessboard and monarchs like replaceable pieces, switching loyalty with the cold precision of a general adjusting formations before battle. Warwick grew up in a world where nobles were not elegant lords drinking wine in candlelit halls, but private warlords ruling fortified castles, commanding personal armies, and changing the fate of England with every alliance, betrayal, or marriage. And Richard, tall, charismatic, terrifyingly competent, inherited from his father and uncles not just land, but the instinct to turn political conflict into profit. From the beginning, he showed an almost unnatural talent for survival, while families around him were slaughtered, executed, exiled, and erased by the civil wars. Warwick kept expanding his power, acquiring vast estates through inheritance, marriage, and strategic loyalty, until he became one of the richest men in England, wealthier than the crown he claimed to protect. But what made Warwick dangerous was not his fortune. It was his ability to read the political climate like a sailor reads dangerous winds. He saw that King Henry VI, the weak, pious, indecisive Lancaster king, was drifting toward disaster, mentally unstable, controlled by factions, incapable of ruling. And so Warwick aligned himself with the rival House of York, supporting Richard, Duke of York, a man with a claim to the throne and the energy Henry lacked. When civil war erupted, Warwick didn't hesitate. He raised armies, took command of fortresses, captured cities, and turned himself into the Yorkist military engine. In battle, he was a spectacle, a towering figure in crimson and gold, fighting in the front lines like a knight from legend, rallying soldiers by sheer force of presence, surviving ambushes, storms of arrows, and the blood-drenched fields of St. Albans, Wakefield, and Towton, the last of which became one of the deadliest battles ever fought on English soil. Warwick was not simply a general, he became the face of Yorkist legitimacy. When Henry VI collapsed into bouts of madness so deep he could not recognize his newborn son, Warwick became the man the kingdom turned to, a noble who could maintain order, command loyalty, and speak with authority. That the moment he realized that England responded to his voice more than to the king's, he crossed the threshold from supporter to ruler in the shadows. And when the Duke of York was killed at Wakefield, Warwick simply shifted his support to York's eldest son, Edward, the tall, handsome, charismatic warrior who would become Edward IV. Warwick practically carried Edward onto the throne. It was Warwick who negotiated alliances, secured military support, rallied armies, pressed parliament, handled propaganda, won key battles, and orchestrated Edward's coronation. England suddenly had a young, powerful Yorkist king, but it also had something else, a king who owed everything to Warwick. The Kingmaker now stood at the height of his influence. For a brief moment, he was effectively the ruler of England. Foreign ambassadors greeted him before the king. Nobles bowed lower to him than they did to Edward. He decided taxes, policies, marriages, alliances. He controlled the royal council, and though he hid behind ceremony, everyone knew the truth. Kings might wear crowns, but Warwick made them. But power corrodes even the minds built to handle it. Warwick began to believe he had a divine instinct for politics, that he, not Edward, should decide the future of England. He arranged diplomatic marriages for Edward, negotiated with France, manipulated Parliament, and expected Edward to obey. But Edward IV, though young, was not Henry VI. He was confident, independent, calculating, and unwilling to be anyone's puppet. When Warwick tried to force Edward into a political marriage with a French princess to strengthen diplomatic ties, Edward responded with a decision that shattered everything. He secretly married Elizabeth Woodville, an English widow from a minor family. It was a personal choice, romantic and impulsive, and to Warwick, an unforgivable insult. Overnight, Warwick's influence collapsed. The Woodville family filled the court. Warwick's advice was ignored. His strategies were dismissed. His pride, built over decades, cracked. And when proud men crack, they do not break, they explode. Warwick turned the same political brilliance he had once used to build Edward's throne toward destroying it. He whispered to nobles, he fueled resentment, he exaggerated Edward's mistakes. He played the same game, but now against the man he had created. And when the moment came, he struck. He captured Edward, arrested members of the royal household, and attempted to rule England once more through a captive king. But he miscalculated. Edward refused to bend. Warwick could seize him physically but not politically. The people did not accept a king held hostage. Edward escaped. Civil war returned, and Warwick found himself forced into an alliance none could have predicted. He reconciled with Queen Margaret of Anjou, Henry VI's fierce Lancastrian wife, the very woman he once fought to destroy. Warwick, the Kingmaker, was ready to unmake his own creation and restore the very dynasty he had once sworn to replace. A man who changes kings begins believing he can change fate itself. Warwick's decision to ally himself with the Lancastrians was the kind of political somersault only a man drunk on his own power could attempt. He traveled to France, knelt before Margaret of Anjou, the woman he had spent years trying to defeat, and promised to restore her broken dynasty as if he were not the architect of its collapse. Louis IV of France, a king who treated diplomacy like a spider weaving a web around unsuspecting insects, happily encouraged the alliance. If England destroyed itself, France would finally breathe easier. The Kingmaker sailed back to England not as a Yorkist hero, but as a Lancastrian avenger landing with French ships, mercenaries, and the fury of a man determined to rewrite history. And incredibly, he succeeded. Edward IV was caught off guard, abandoned by allies who suddenly feared choosing the wrong side, betrayed by nobles who remembered how Warwick once made him king and assumed he could unmake him just as easily. Edward fled into exile, escaping to Burgundy with nothing but a handful of loyal companions. Meanwhile, Warwick marched into London, overthrew Edward's government, and dragged Henry VI, the gentle, broken, half-mad king, out of a monastery and thrust him once more onto the throne. Warwick restored Henry like a craftsman, repairing an antique he planned to display. But it was obvious to anyone with eyes that Henry was not a ruler. He was a symbol, a puppet, an artifact the Kingmaker used to legitimize his power. For a brief, surreal moment, Warwick ruled England openly. His banners flew over London. Foreign ambassadors addressed him as the true authority. The nobles obeyed him. Parliament accepted him. And Henry VI wandered the palace like a confused ghost, murmuring prayers while Warwick handled the affairs of state with the arrogance of a man who believed he had finally beaten fate. But history has a brutal sense of humor. Edward IV, exiled in Burgundy, was far more dangerous than Warwick expected. He secured money, troops, ships, and, more importantly, he had a weapon Warwick no longer possessed: momentum. By 1471, Edward returned to England, gathering support as he marched. Nobles who once feared Warwick now remembered Edward's charisma, his victories, his strength. The Woodvilles rallied. Yorkist loyalists rose. Warwick tried to intercept him at Barnet, preparing for the decisive confrontation of his life. Dawn broke on April 14, 1471, through thick fog so dense soldiers could barely see their own standards. Orders were misheard. Units clashed with allies by mistake. Confusion spread like wildfire. In that chaos, Richard Neville, the Kingmaker, the most brilliant political mind of his age, the man who had crowned and dethroned kings, found himself fighting not with strategy but with brute force. He charged into battle, refusing to retreat, swinging his sword like a knight of old. For decades he had played kingmaker in council chambers, but now he fought on foot, armor dented, blood splashed across his helmet, determined to carve victory out of disaster. The fog lifted, and with it Warwick's illusions. His lines collapsed. The Yorkists advanced. The kingmaker was surrounded. He died the old-fashioned way, not through treachery, not in a council chamber, not by poison or political plot, but in the mud, crushed under the weight of the very system he had manipulated. Edward IV, surveying the battlefield, ordered Warwick's body displayed in St. Paul's so everyone could see that the kingmaker who made and unmade monarchs could not escape the simple truth that politics, at its core, is mortal. His brother Montague died beside him, and with their deaths the Nevilles, once the most powerful family in England, fell like a tower losing its foundation. In the days that followed, Edward defeated the remaining Lancastrian forces. Prince Edward of Westminster was killed, and Margaret of Anjou was captured. Henry VI, mentally broken and politically useless, was quietly murdered in the Tower. Warwick's rebellion ended not with negotiation or compromise, but with the complete annihilation of everything he had touched. And that is the cruel irony of the Kingmaker. He could raise armies, command nations, manipulate kings, fool foreign courts, and survive the worst storms of civil war. But he could not control the one thing he believed he mastered, the future. He spent his life treating thrones like interchangeable decorations, assuming kingship was something he could rearrange at will. But kings, unlike chess pieces, bleed. Dynasties break. People remember, and eventually the game turns on the player. Warwick wanted to shape history. Instead, history shaped him into a legend and a warning. The man who believed he could bend England to his will, only to discover that the country was violently capable of bending back. In the end, Richard Neville became exactly what his enemies always feared and his allies secretly suspected, a kingmaker who never realized that making kings is far easier than keeping them.